7-footer that played for Steve, or played with Steve at the University of Iowa.
Yeah.
And Steve Waite said, he didn't say hello, goodbye, or whatever. He just said, I hear you're looking at Carfino. And I said, yeah, I am. He said, he's a great player. He said, he's really talented. He said, he's a good guy. He should be in the NBA. And boy, he said, you should take him. And I took him. And that influenced it very much. I didn't have doubts about Steve, but sometimes when you get away from it and start looking at other players, so Steve Waite, and that just an accidental meeting influenced that a great deal. Let's see. I told you about Mario Donaldson and Leon.
Let's hear about, there's two guys that I'd like to talk about, LeRoy Loggins and Derek Rucker. I think that was instrumental in that period of time as well. What was the story behind LeRoy?
Okay, LeRoy was a player in the AAABL, as you recall. That's the league that I formed with the support of the Queensland Amateur Basketball Association, the state, to bring American players to come and be. We had a draft. They the clubs drew their name out of a hat, and these players were billeted with that club for 6 weeks and played with that club. And we had a preseason tournament, regular season, and we had playoffs. And LeRoy Loggins was in that first group that came over. He was from a small school called Fairmont State. But I heard in advance through the NAI that he was quite a player. And so he came down and proved that he was quite a player. And the team that he played with, the Gold Coast, in that local Brisbane competition, they were all over LeRoy, and they wanted him to. And so they pretty much handled it from there. I didn't, after that, for example, was not involved in the placement of LeRoy with the Brisbane Bullets, but I was involved with LeRoy coming to Australia and him getting exposure down here. James Crawford was another one in that group, but it was different in that I did, in fact, represent him and bring him to Geelong to start his career. And it was Derek Ruck. Derek, there was an assistant coach at Davidson where he played that called me and said, maybe you better check him out. I didn't even know the coach. And I called Derek, and we had a good talk. And the Bullets were coming to Iowa, and they were playing some college exhibition games pre-NBL that year. And so I talked to Brian Curl about putting Derek into that team so I could take a look at him. And Brian said, we pretty much already selected Andre Lafleur.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I think you better take a look at Derek. Derek was really an explosive scorer and so on. So he did. He took him in. And Derek went on that tour and eventually selected. And then he went to Brisbane and was MVP one year. And he has great athletic genes from his father, who was a professional football player. Derek had an extraordinary career down there. And then Andre, Andre came down there, and I believe he might have been playing in the VPA before he played in the NBL. Then I picked up Andre and got him a job with Illawarra.
Yeah.
And Andre was a good player too, very good. He would have been one of the top guards for sure of that era.
I remember him carving when he got to Gold Coast Rollers. He started to carve up.
Yeah. One there was Tad Duffelmeyer. I don't know if you recall him or not. Tad played with. He was from Des Moines, where my home is or was, and he played some high level Division I basketball. And he was again one of those guys. There was no place for him to go. He's 6'2", and he was a guard, a skill guard. And his basketball was essentially over except for recreation. And his high school coach told me about it. And so I called him one day, and I never met him, and I said, meet me at the YMCA in the morning.
Yeah.
And be ready to go out there at noon. That gym's open at noon, so there won't be anybody around, and I'll get a ball. There'll be a ball down there for you. And I'll want to see you. I just want to see you go up and down the floor. I want to see you do some shooting, some ball handling. And he came I was sitting up in the balcony. He came into the gym and he was looking around. I think he thought someone was trying to pull something on him. I don't think he believed that it was really happening.
Yeah.
And finally I yelled out, I said, Dad, pick that ball up and let's see it go. And he was, based on his college background, I knew that was very solid. And I just wanted to be sure that all his working parts were in order.
Yeah.
And he was fit. And he went off to Australia about a week later, and his wife joined him over there. And I think he has a son that has played.
Junior. It's just carving up. Yeah, and I think a lot of these players have sons that have sort of got, and I'm continuing that on. You said
Chuck Hermison was a guy who I lived for. A lot of the guys I got fairly close to where I lived at the time in Des Moines, Iowa. In that area, there's 28 colleges in the state. There's 4 Division I's, and so there was. And I didn't really see that Division I was necessary exactly. There was a lot of good players playing Division II basketball that were every bit as good as the ones that were better than the ones that were. They also had an expanded role at Division II, like Wayne McDaniel. Wayne McDaniel was a scorer, rebounder. He had a green light when he was at Cal State, Bakersfield, whereas like Chuck Hermison at Iowa State played a much smaller role as far as scoring was concerned. So these guys, they needed to be able to score first and foremost.
Yeah.
And so many times the ones that were, and like LeRoy Loggins was from a small NAI school. James Crawford, a small NAI school. A guy named Dave Nelson, who led the league in rebounding, was from the same. Lindsey Houston. All those guys were from smaller schools, and they'd had expanded roles. And when they stepped into the NBL club, that's exactly what the NBL club wanted out of them. But the expanded role. Benny Lewis was another one.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And just the decades of connectivity that you've provided for the NBL players and then for the Australian and for the fans, like people that grew up with it, like myself. I don't know where the league would be if you didn't connect these people together, because for us, these imports came down and that was, flash and cool, and they look like the dream team, so that was, every kid was playing basketball, directly attributable to you. So if you don't have an Order of Australia medal, that's probably due. And thank you very much for your time, and lovely to speak with you, and hopefully we'll stay in touch. And as these kind of roll out, you'll be able to listen to the players' stories and then correct them if someone like Ricky Grace. Actually, I came down and I was a big deal. You can be like, actually, Ricky, and then you can lay it out. We'll keep you as the grandfather of the stroke. So your first episode in the bag, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you, and NBL's number one in my heart for sure.
Thank you for listening to the Stories Within Stories podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the show. For more stories like this, head to barefootmedia.ca.